hey, if you're watching this video, you are probably trying to create a set of financial projections, maybe for a potential investor or lender, or maybe just for some business planning purpose, or you might be trying to acquire an existing business and need some projections to help you understand what the right price point to acquire that business looks like. And you might be wondering, like, how do I come up with any reasonable numbers here? I feel like I'm just, closing my eyes and throwing arrows. And sometimes that's what projections feel like. And a lot of times that's actually what it is, but we try to be as informed as possible. And so what I'm going to show you in this video is how to create a set of projections. I'm going to show you 3 different business examples using 3 different templates that we have, and show you how do we do research, how do we do some data-driven analysis to try to come up with what would be reasonable projections based on industry standards, and so that when we then present these to the bank or to an investor, we're not going to be laughed out of the room, right? And so first of all, my name's Adam Huxema. I'm the co-founder of ProjectionHub. And over the last decade, we've helped 50,000 entrepreneurs create financial projections for potential investors and lenders. And today, I really want to just talk about what are the basics of creating projections, show you some examples, and show you ultimately how this ProjectionHub way, this data-driven approach, is going to be really useful and help you feel confident when you're going and pitching investors or providing these projections to your lender. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, so what I've got pulled up here is our fine and casual dining restaurant template. And I'm going to start with this template. I'm going to show you just examples of a more technology-based template, or e-commerce template, and then also a trucking business template as well, just to give you a flavor of, see the differences and how we think about these different businesses and how to do research for different types of businesses, so that hopefully you get the idea and then know how to do research for your own business, whatever that might be. All right, so first of all of our projection templates, we've got about 60 of them. They all follow the same structure. We've got an at-a-glance page where you're going to get your projections at a glance with some nice graphs and tables. You're going to get 5 years of income statement, 5 years of cash flow, 5 years of balance sheet projections, and then those 5 years of income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet broken down by month as well, so you get that monthly detail. But let's go ahead and dive into how do we come up with some reasonable startup costs. Okay, so a lot of our approach is really just going to be Google, right? And so depending on what type of business you're starting, I would Google how much does it cost to start a restaurant, a fine dining restaurant, for example. And then that will give you some range of like what's normal, right? And then from there, you're really going to need to do research on your specific location, because starting a fine dining restaurant in New York City is going to cost much different than starting it in Kansas. And so you need to do research on your local area. And in this restaurant template, you have the ability to enter in fixed assets. One big cost will be, hey, are you doing the leasehold improvements? Are you buying a building? Are you building a new building? Is maybe the landlord's doing all the leasehold improvements for you? Or maybe it was already a restaurant and you're just taking over the location. So that can vary dramatically here in terms of the price point. So it's hard to say, hey, here's the average. Every restaurant's going to have this for a startup cost. That's just not reality, right? And so you're going to need to do the research and figure that out. And you're going to have the ability to put in investment as well as loans to this model. Now, the key thing that is probably the most important and probably the most difficult to do is to project revenue. A lot of us can project what are the startup costs. We can do research, figure out what it's going to cost to start a business, what do we need to buy. We might also be able to do good research and figure out what are those ongoing operating costs to operate a business. That's pretty easy. Some Google searches, find like what's a typical cost of goods sold or food cost for a restaurant or labor cost for a restaurant. You can find those things. What is more difficult is how do we project revenue? Well, revenue is going to be, for a restaurant as an example, we want to really start kind of from the basic assumptions and build our way up to what do we think we're going to do in terms of revenue. And so I'll give you an example here. In a restaurant, we're going to say, hey, how many seats do we have in the restaurant? Because that's going to determine our capacity, right? How many days are we open? What's the average party size? How long are these parties staying? How many hours do we have, breakfast, lunch, dinner, available? And then here's a big one for restaurants particularly, and lots of different business models too have seasonality. And so what we can do here is we're able to say what percentage of our capacity is going to be filled for breakfast. And you'll see we've got breakfast, lunch, dinner, evening hours, takeout, that sort of thing. So we have the ability to really kind of do this for all sections of a restaurant. I'm not going to go through all of that. I'll just show you this example here for breakfast. So what I would recommend is I would go to Google AdWords keyword planning tool. There's a really cool trick you can do. So you can type in, let's say you're a breakfast restaurant, primarily serving breakfast. You can type in breakfast restaurants near me in the Google keyword planning tool. and it will show you estimates of search volume over time. And so you want to look at, like, there's the ability to look at more than 1 year, and you can see trends, and you'll see trends and say, oh wow, for whatever reason, more people go out to breakfast during the summer months, or maybe during the winter months or whatever. And you can also look at these trends by location. So if you are in a northern state where it gets cold, maybe seasonality has more of an impact on you, whereas maybe in a southern state, it's more steady because the weather is the same, or good for breakfast all the time. And so you want to do some research on that so that you can really figure out, okay, what are my busy months going to look like? What are my slow months going to look like? So you can see you have the ability to say, okay, like let's say January, we're really slow, but we think we're going to ramp up our capacity in the summer months. Wow, we're going to be at 75, 85, 90% capacity for breakfast. Maybe you have great outdoor seating in the morning, and it's got to be warm. It's got to be the summer months for you to really hit that capacity. So that's an example of the kind of research that you can do. Now, you also have the ability to enter in menu items, so price points, costs. Now, what I would do in terms of cost is I would try to find average food cost for restaurants. If you Google typical food cost or average food cost percentage for a restaurant, you might find, hey, it's 30% is what we should expect. And then, so in this example, you'll see up here, we've got the equation here is the price times 0.4 or 40%. So we're assuming a 40% food cost here for this large entree. And you can enter in those percentages for different menu items with different profit margins, right? So then the other thing that you want to do over here, you have the ability to say, what's the average number of each item on the menu that the average person is going to order? And then ultimately what that's doing down here is saying, here's the average ticket, $18.60. This is really like a per person, on average, is going to spend $18.60. So when you fill out these assumptions, what you're going to want to do is make sure that you go out and Google what's average US individuals spend at a restaurant for breakfast. And you'll probably be able to find some number and make sure it's reasonable within that 1860 or whatever number you have here. So these are the types of things that we're doing to do our specific research for your specific industry and make sure that these assumptions that we're putting in seem reasonable. So I'm not going to belabor the point here any longer on this restaurant model. I will show you on our input other expenses tab, which we have in all of our models. You have the ability to enter in your expenses as either a fixed dollar amount or a percentage of revenue. Now, the percentage of revenue structure is really good when you don't know exactly what you're going to have to spend on these different areas, but hey, on average, operating expenses for this type of business is 30% of revenue. You can use that percentage of revenue expense structure instead of having to put in individual expenses for everything if that's a direction you want to go. All right, so I'm going to jump over to our e-commerce template and just give you an idea of how the revenue model there is different. And because we don't have seats, we don't have capacity, we probably don't have seasonality in the e-commerce business. And so what we're looking at here is we've got an advertising budget, we've got a cost per click, and where am I getting that average cost per click? Going back to that Google AdWords keyword planning tool, and I'm typing in, if I'm selling shoes online, I'm typing in shoes, and I'm seeing what is the average cost that Google is estimating for a click. And that's going to give you what number you should put in here. Now, here this is saying, hey, what's the conversion rate of a website visitor to an order? If you're not open yet, if you don't have any data yet, we did a little research on e-commerce specifically. We did a whole separate video about this, but the average e-commerce conversion rate is 2.6% roughly. And so, make sure that, again, Google is your friend when you're creating projections. And one thing you can do is in Excel, you can add a new note, just say, add the link, or say Google AdWords keyword planner. Maybe that's where you got it, so you can remember where you're coming up with these assumptions, or link to the article that references the typical conversion rate that you found. Now, for an e-commerce business, you're going to want to know, like, what's the average order that a customer is going to make? What dollar amount's the average order for an e-commerce customer, maybe in your particular industry? Or what does a customer spend in my industry per month? That's another good data point to find. So for example, let's say you're selling dog food online and the average US consumer pet owner spends $40 on dog food per month. Now, if you're projecting that your customers are spending $500 a month on your dog food, you're probably out in left field. You're probably not right. And so again, finding ways to back up what you're doing with data is what we try to do and try to teach at ProjectionHub. So the last template I want to show you here is our trucking template. And again, just to give you an idea of how things are different, everything is different. So between industries, on the input assumptions tab here, you have the ability to enter in trucks that you own, whether you purchased or leased them, some key financing information. And again, you're going to be able to find things like what's the average used truck price or average new truck price. Do that research to know what to put in these fields. And on the revenue side, you can do research on, hey, what's the average number of miles driven per day that a truck driver can do? What's the average revenue per mile? And this is constantly changing. It's an evolving market. And so, you're going to need to do this research when you're doing the projections. Hey, what are the average revenue per mile that customers are paying right now? And what's driver pay per mile? Again, that changes as well as demand in the market changes. And then all of these variable costs, right now in 2022, fuel prices, diesel prices are really through the roof. And so you'll need to do research on, based on your truck, what are you going to expect in terms of a fuel price per mile? And these numbers vary over time. So again, we have built out the structure of the assumptions for these 60 different business models. But as you're creating projections, what you have to do is go in and do that individual Google research and figure out what seems like reasonable assumptions and show your work if you can. Comment in the model so that when someone else, an investor or lender, is looking at this, they can see how you came up with those assumptions. So the last thing I want to mention is that when you are finished working on your projections, what you want to do is come to this at a glance page, see what your net income percentage is here. This is a percentage net income. You can also see your total revenue, so if if you're one person in a truck, that probably one person in a truck, maybe they can only generate $500,000 in revenue a year, is kind of as a capacity. And so if you're showing one truck driver in a truck with $3 million in revenue, something's probably off. And so again, check these numbers once you're done to make sure, do these seem reasonable? And then the percentage, that net profit percentage, you can easily find, Google typical net profit margin in trucking industry. And it might say 10% and you're projecting 11%. Great, you're within reason. In the restaurant industry, it's probably single digit margins for a lot of restaurants. If you're projecting 40% net profit margin for your restaurant, you're probably forgetting some expenses, or you're probably projecting too much revenue. So these are the types of things to keep in mind. And we think, hopefully, that our templates can really help you at least know what types of stuff, what are the key assumptions I really need to think about as I'm creating projections, and what will those investors and lenders want to look at. And so that is our process. If you have questions, we'd love to help entrepreneurs create reasonable projections. And so reach out to us at support@ProjectionHub.com. Leave us a comment in the video description in the video comment section below, and we'd be happy to follow up and help answer your questions.